thank you for joining us today. And just to kick us off, let's give the panel an idea of what the audience is feeling about regarding to business travel today. So if you could just hold up your little smiley faces or frowny faces and let us know, how satisfied are you with the tools and systems that companies provide today for business travel? I think it's a bit of a mix.
Wow.
I think you guys have some work to do. So global corporate travel is valued at approximately $1.4 trillion in 2024. We're expecting it to grow at least by 10%. But we've got Zoom, right, and Teams. So those are becoming new norms. We have a lot of geopolitical uncertainty going on, and we have sustainability expectations, right, rising every day. How do each of you feel about what's going on, and what do you think about the future state of managed travel? Like, what's changing for better or worse? Anybody can start.
Sure, I can start. I mean, the few things that you just mentioned are absolutely what's happening at Salesforce. First, I mean, just turn on the news this morning, turn on CNN and see what's happening across the U.S. I mean, the duty of care that we are having to, kind of more increasingly manage, and it's very difficult, to manage now with so much changing, across the globe, whether it be climate change, weather events. Every day that I, log onto my email, I'm getting an alert from my TMC about, a strike or, capacity or volume issues at airports. There's delays. So, I mean, it's becoming increasingly difficult to manage duty of care, I would say, and creating more, certainly a better cross-collaboration across, different groups at the company. But also, during the pandemic, you saw a lot of, employees basically, go home. So, we, even though we're bringing employees, back to the office, the norm is really either fully remote or hybrid. And I would say that this new, kind of hybrid model is really driving more selective travel. You're seeing the travel come back as, return and more of purpose-driven. So it's, people are certainly being more selective about when they go, how long they go. And sustainability for us, has certainly been a driver of change across our program. It's no longer, considered a trend. It's not a preference. It's a requirement. And it's driven a lot of policy change across the company.
Charlie?
I think the recalibration, you talked about, Zoom and some of the other tools. I think the recalibration has taken place already as far as that goes. Look at this. There's a lot of us here who want to be here in person, who want to be able to see each other, to speak to each other. And a lot of those things just can't happen that naturally over Zoom or Teams or whatever the technology is that people are using. So I think that recalibration has happened. I think people recognize that you can sort of nurture existing relationships for a certain time period without having to see the people face to face. But if you're establishing new relationships, if it's been a while since you've seen people, business travelers need to get out, and they want to get out. We do an annual global business traveler survey, and people see that travel is a key component of sort of their compensation, their career growth. And so I don't think that's going away, but I think there's certainly challenges to it, whether it's strikes, whether it's military action, whether it's different things. But it seems like the constant is that business travelers want to travel for business.
JC?
I totally agree with you. I will actually almost split it into two parts, and we really saw it in the cohort of customer we have. So we had typically tech consulting, we'll put them into kind of white-collar type of work, where, as you said, Zoom and hybrid work has changed the way they travel. For some people, it's more travel. For some people, it's less travel. For some people, it's shorter travel, but more events. But definitely, it has changed the way they travel. And then we have this second, in the case of our company, actually, the majority of it, which is people who travel for work. And for these people, nothing has really changed. They install a solar panel somewhere. They install a kitchen. They have to work on a warehouse. And for those, it's funny because when we ask them, they don't even think about it in terms of business travel. They are like, I need to be there to do my job. So for them, they have a completely different view of the world. And as a consequence, the requisite of sustainability, for example, or cost management is very different depending on the two populations. Because for one is part of the job to be done, and for the other one is a little bit more discretionary based on the impact it delivers.
Yep.
Jenny, you said travel decisions for business are being made more thoughtfully. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And like what's going into those decisions? Is it budget? Is it trip purpose?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a combination of things. I mean, during the pandemic, we did, put together a little bit of a more required approval process before employees travel. And that was largely initially more duty of care related and, just making sure that, we knew employees were going to destinations that were safe, and it was in combination and collaboration with our global safety and security team. But then, of course, it did become, this is actually a great way to get, managers more involved in managing travel budgets. And so even, still to this day, we do have that travel approval process in place where, EVP approval is required. I will say it is like one of the processes that is definitely the bane of many of our existence because it is very manual. So when we get into AI, we can, talk about some of my requests there. But
I got a product for you, Jenny.
Yeah, I thought you might have. Yeah. So no, but so yeah, I mean, we definitely like that. Is helping drive some of those decisions, but also, like I said, I think that some of the hybrid workforce and like me, for example, being based remotely, when I do travel, I try to make good use of that time. So like I'm over here in Europe now. I'm from the U.S. When I go back to the U.S., I try to do multiple things on that particular trip. So we're definitely seeing that more with our travelers as well. They're, either combining, meetings into one trip or, adding on that leisure, part of the trip to kind of do everything in 1 week and, reduce their flights. We also, a few years back, launched we tied ESG goals to executive compensation. And that was a really great way to, help, enhance accountability across the leadership level. And there was a reduction in flights that happened. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we completely reduced travel or stopped traveling. In some cases, we just reduced our short haul flights and started jumping on trains, which then people started realizing, whoa, this is a way more productive way to travel. Now that I work from home and I'm actually closer to the train station than the airport, this is amazing. That's the case for me. So I think there were a lot of really interesting and cool things that came out of the pandemic, at least for us, and this sustainability requirement that's happening because it's really driving different decisions and how people want to travel. And then also I think that it's something like 5 active generations working across the workforce right now. And if you count board positions and executives, you take that to 7 different generations. But 75% I read, I think CTM CEO was quoted in North Star that 75% are millennials. And then closely following is Gen Z. So it's like they're going to be making business decisions very soon. So we need to really understand, what, their expectations are. And I think that that's a lot of what we're trying to tap into right now.
So Charlie and JC, your value to companies is helping the Jennies, right, of the world manage their corporate travel spend, keeping them on budget, determining ROI, helping them with all these different travel decisions. How has technology helped you to be more effective, efficient, agile, to making these travel decisions?
I think for us, it's been, we first decided to integrate travel and expense together, decades ago. And we saw a huge impact on corporations of being able to have everything integrated into one system with one login. We're now really taking that a step beyond that to integrating just beyond travel and expense to integrating to the rest of the company's systems. Mm-hmm. And so I think we saw, a 26% improvement in compliance when people integrated the two. And now SAP is looking across the board and looking at the value of, hey, if you can integrate across the entirety of the ERP, of the HR systems, of the CRM systems, now you can actually get to a point where your data is really working for you. And having clean data cutting across the 3 different or 4 different or 5 different systems of a company now enables, we're really, I hate, and it's so overused, the AI word at this conference and in general at every conference that I've been to, But the reality is that we do see a view where the data can actually start surfacing very salient points to the travel managers, to the accounts payable group, to all the professionals throughout, without even necessarily having to ask the question. The systems are going to get to a point where they're going to be able to identify the different trends and put forth ideas and put forth different suggestions to, let's say, the travel manager to say, hey, have you noticed this? I feel like we've been talking about ROI of travel for a long, long time, right? And it's very difficult for someone to be able to tie my particular trip here, the meetings that I've had out there, the reception yesterday, the discussions, to be able to say, oh, because Charlie went to Phocuswright in Barcelona, we generated this many more millions of dollars. People recognize that they shouldn't have a different travel and expense solution from the rest of the stuff and brought it together. But the reality is that going forward, if you integrate the systems, you could get to a point where the system will be able to say, oh, you know what, we haven't visited this type of customer or this customer in this much time for a face-to-face meeting, and we recognize from all of the other data that when we do, that customer tends to renew 14% sooner or 30% faster, whatever those details are. And so I think we're going to get to a point where all the systems will be tied together. Selfishly for us, we believe that that's easier if it's all in one integrated platform. But we are continuing down that evolution. At Concur, the goal is travel and expenses to practically manage themselves. But beyond that at SAP, it's really getting to a point where the integration of all the systems will just make life a lot easier.
JC?
Absolutely. So maybe, and actually surely, because we started our journey on the back of wonderful company like yours that have paved the way. But we started really on the SMB mid-market, which means we needed to focus very heavily on the traveler. So actually a lot of the innovation we have driven was about how do we avoid leakage? How do we avoid people going around the system? Because nothing matters if people book whatever they want. Literally nothing matters. The best travel policy in the world is irrelevant if people just do whatever they want. And so the way we attacked the problem was, okay, we need to give them what they want. What do they want? They want what they are using as a traveler in the consumer industry. How do we replicate it everywhere for train, for car, for flight, to how you modify, to how you cancel, to how your app look like. And that has been a big driver of everything, ranging from automation all the way to AI, to convince the traveler that it was the right way to book. Because once we do that, then we have the foundation to run a program. And whilst in larger company, it can be probably imposed a little bit more. In small and medium-sized company, it was really a struggle. And so we really needed to convince, almost from the ground up, the traveler, like, this is actually good for you. And honestly, flight and hotel were fantastic. Train was by far the most complex.
Oh, yeah.
It was incredibly technically complex. I promise I'm not going to talk more about train integration.
Thank you.
But it's so hard. It is like, there is a reason why very few people do train. There is no money and it's very hard.
Yep.
It is incredibly difficult. But once you nail it, it is fantastic for the traveler because they don't need to go around the system to use the train. And that's the core of it. That's when a system works.
I think that's the key to a lot of what you said, right? You asked at the beginning how many of you are satisfied. Mm-hmm. I would say maybe it was about 50-50 if I was ignoring in the lights the ones that I didn't like. But I think the main reason for that is people are looking for that consumerized experience that they're used to. Mm. And whereas not everyone goes out and fills out a purchase order for their regular life, most people who are traveling for business also travel for leisure. They're very used to a certain experience. Yeah. And so that's a lot of what we've spent the last 3-4 years doing is replatforming the system to create a very consumerized experience. We actually use the train aggregator to do all of our rail work because I think the reality is in the space is that there's just not the amount of technical lift to be able to do some of these things. There's not enough transactions for everyone to kind of justify going and doing their own. And so that's actually, we're at a technology conference. I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to help solve those niche problems where maybe there's not enough volume for any one particular company to do it. But if someone can do it across 5 or 6 different companies, it makes it worth their while.
And can I just make a comment before we move on, Alicia? I love that you're both talking about like the deep integration across multiple platforms and then also the leakage, because I think that what has kind of happened in the travel industry over the years is a lot of these, legacy systems have really eroded trust. And so we see that every day, like the trust in the system. I mean, we're seeing that. A perfect example is in Israel right now. It's like we used to have one of the highest online adoption in Israel, and now, much like I'm sure other companies, there's a lack of trust in the content that's coming through because, as you know, the volatility of the market, airlines are, adding inventory, pulling it back every day, and now, call centers are overloaded. There's no automation going into that process whatsoever, and so just addressing that leakage and building that trust back in the system, and for the integration across, the multiple systems within a company. We are looking for new KPIs as travel managers. I mean, our programs have been built on, transaction fees for many, many years, and they're built on like that $99 Southwest airline ticket. That's no longer what we want to be presenting to our CFO, to our CEO. We really want, travel to be looked at as more of a transformational function and lever for change versus just another transactional, cost element of the company. So I think, even in the future, it's like, does the UX of your tool even really matter? We could be like doing all this integration and awesome, stuff behind the scenes, and I could be going into a prompt box in Slack and just asking for my travel, asking for my data, but you're powering it behind the scenes. So I think that this is all very exciting stuff to be talking about.
Well, I'm glad I didn't have to drag AI and automation out of any of you.
Yeah.
So I think what I'll do is I'll jump right into AI agents.
Yeah.
And is it on the roadmap? Charlie and JC, are you talking about it? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you said. So I think let's separate two things. The AI agent on the front end, which is, I want to go to New York for 3 days, and this is my, that is going to come. Like, that there is no debate about it. The moment typing a prompt is going to be more efficient than choosing a filter, is going to work. That's great. And our bet is that they're going to be a transition phase where some people feel more comfortable with your classic from to filter, which is basically what we have been using in this industry for the past 10 years. And then there will be people that will adopt the kind of prompt style of working to say, I'm going there, I'm going to use. What is the most important is it doesn't change anything in the backend. Still things to be ticketed, still things to be issued, and then the rest of the AI magic is happening in the backend. It's like, how do you automate the processes? How do you automate modification, cancellation, involuntary changes? So there is really this two layer of AI, like a front-end one that's going to happen no matter what, and then how do you use it in the backend so that all the processes are faster, better, and smoother?
Yeah, I think for me, it's not, is it on the roadmap? There's things that have already been delivered from that roadmap. So one, Concur has been using AI probably for about the last 10 years. Our Expenseit product where you took a picture and then it would parse the receipt was using AI. We've now since enhanced it to be able to increase the reliability of it by about 90%. And so now you can drag a hotel folio there, it'll automatically itemize the hotel folio. And I agree, like I think things like, can you put a chatbot in the front of it, or can you put something different in the front of it? That's actually fairly easy to do. I think to me the really cool thing is what's sort of coming next, again, is if your systems are integrated, then what the system can do is recognize that I put an appointment to go to Phocuswright in Barcelona on my calendar and that I don't live in Barcelona, and to say, oh, Charlie, it looks like you're going to Barcelona in June. Do you want me, you usually fly United, do you want me to book this flight for you? You usually stay at these hotels, do you want me to book these hotels for you? Oh, I see in our vacation system at SAP at FSB SuccessFactors, I see that you still have 6 vacation days, holiday days unallocated for the rest of the year. Would you like to extend your trip by 2 or 3 years, by 2 or 3 days? 2 or 3 years would be even better.
That would be amazing.
That's a glitch in the
You'd have to
system.
move to
like
France
that.
for that.
Nice system.
Yeah. It's a lot of vacation time. But being to the point where it says, great, you want to extend your trip by 2 or 3 days? I say yes, it automatically goes to the vacation request system, requests it. When I get back, it looks at the receipts, it says, oh, you stayed 3 days for personal, 5 days for work, so I'm only going to expense 5 days of that. Like, I think to me, that's the practical application of where AI is going. Because honestly, typing, DEN to BCN wasn't a very complicated thing for me to do in the booking tool. It's all of the other manual processes that you have to link up that are far more interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think to even take that a step further, like to be able to, and we talk about this all the time, but to recommend, my previous behavior, but what about the booking behavior of maybe other Salesforce employees, right? That like, I have never been to this destination. What's everybody else doing? Where's everybody else staying? What's the path of least resistance? And other things like, landing at Heathrow, for example. If you're coming from the US, you're landing at Heathrow, the first thing you're doing is jumping in an Uber, which is not the right thing to do. There's a train that goes right into the center of London, right? But nobody knows how to do that, and it's not connected in the system. People don't know how to read the train tickets in different countries, so there's so much that AI and automation could do to help just ease that burden throughout the entire travel journey. And, and the expense part can sometimes be the worst, right? Because now you're itemizing a hotel bill, so.
But most of that is we've been automating most of that. The same thing with the flight recommendations. That's the next thing that we put out there, which is already out there, which is, hey, you typically fly these flights, or to your point, you haven't done it, but hey, this is in policy, this is a decent fare, and this is what most of the people in your company do. Therefore, I'm going to sort it to the top and try to guess what you were going to pick anyway. So a lot of that's going to be happening already, which is great. Yes.
It is very
Okay,
good.
well, we have final seconds.
Okay.
With 3 words only, finish the sentence. In 10 years, managed corporate travel will.
Be much easier.
Did you both say the same thing?
I said transform, but I don't know.
I said be much easier.
Different, but the same.
Oh, that's a good one, too.
JC,
Let's go with
Charlie,
JC.
Jenny, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.